Hey there, how are you doing? Welcome to this video. Today we're doing something quite different. As you can tell, my desk is not in front of me, this time it's behind me. I'm gonna be showing you just after where all of the magic happens. I wanted to do a video, a Q&A kind of style video, because I get often asked questions not only in the comment sections but also in my personal life, and I really wanted to take the time to answer a lot of these questions because a lot of people have questions about these kind of things, which is normal. So we got some things to cover. And if I'm looking often in this direction, it's because this is where I'm keeping it for the moment. But yeah, there are a lot of things I want to be talking about, so I'm really excited to get into this one. And yeah, if you guys enjoy it, we may end up doing more Q&A style videos, maybe. Otherwise, it's just gonna be vibing. Yeah, just a lot of random crap I want to talk about. And so yeah, let's get into it. Today we're just gonna be answering common questions about what is mediumship, what else do I have written, like what's a channeled message, this kind of stuff, which if you're into this kind of things, if you are spiritual, then okay, you understand what it is. Otherwise, it may not be obvious. Yeah, it feels cool, sounds cool, and in practice, when you see the tarot cards, the tarot readings, it's nice, but it's like, what's the magic behind it? You know, it's that kind of things that I'd like to be answering today. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so first thing first, what's tarot? What are tarot cards? What's the role of them? I wanted to have a conversation about that first because in the comments, in a video, like a recent comment on one of my videos, really brought my attention to the fact that this is not obvious to everyone. So let's take the time to talk about it. So tarot, what is it? In my tarot readings, it's these cards. Obviously, like every tarot will have different imagery. Like every artist that makes up a tarot deck or an oracle deck will mean to convey something, a message throughout the cards, and so the images will differ from one tarot to another. Mine are these ones, like on the black end. If you've watched some of my videos, then you have seen them already, because this is the only tarot deck that I own at the moment. And the funny thing about it is that it took me a long time to start reading tarot. Although I was very familiar with oracle cards, it took me a very long time to start reading tarot because of the structure. And we're gonna be talking about that just after, basically. But so what's the point of tarot? I'm not gonna go over like the history of tarot because there are a lot of resources on the internet, and I'm very likely not to be necessarily the most adequate person to talk about these things. Is like I haven't studied all that much. So if you really are interested in the history of tarot, I would recommend just do your own researches. There are plenty of resources on the internet that talk about like the origin of why tarot became a sort of divination tool. But yeah, so the tarot cards, this is these cards, and now the role when it comes to like why we have people using them, it's because basically in tarot, to like keep it very straightforward, every card is associated an archetype. For instance, if I take Temperance. The Temperance card is one of the major arcana. It is associated with an archetype, and if you know anything about an archetype, you know that there are a million and one angles through which to observe an archetype. So Temperance talks about harmony, it talks about peace, it talks about, like on this card we even have the symbol of the yin and the yang on top of it. There are these themes. There are other themes of like war and how to put an end to it, choosing love over hatred or fear, coming to a place of peace after a time of struggles. It's like, I like to think that every card in tarot has an archetype, has an energy, but these energies are often not very workable per se. It's like basically one archetype doesn't mean anything per se. It's like to say the archetype of a man. It's like, okay, but then what do you do with it? And that's when it's very much about like the relationship that you develop with each of the archetypes and all the facets, all of the different angles that you can see this archetype through. And when we're talking about like a message with tarot cards, it's like a question of, the best way I would describe it is like you just get to observe all of the archetypes which are presented to you, and you just start thinking about what's the logic behind them. Why have we put the archetype of the Temperance next to the archetype of the Two of Pentacles, for instance? It's like these are archetypes, but then the meaning behind it is up to, quote unquote, up to you to figure out, because there are a million and one ways to look at these archetypes. That's why when you learn about tarot, I want to almost say like the tedious part is technically learning about these archetypes, learning that every card is associated with an archetype. The reason why I started reading tarot very late in comparison to oracle cards, like these cards, because oracle cards are completely intuitive based, and that's what I'm good at. And in fact, a lot of you who may have looked at my readings know that the way I read tarot today is very similar to the way I read oracle cards. And that's one thing I want to talk about, is like the different styles through which one could be reading tarot. This is very much like the comment that I had in mind. It's like every person offering a message through tarot will offer the message through their own sensitivity, if it makes sense, because of the fact that all of these archetypes have, again, a plethora of different ways to be approached, to be perceived, to be played with. Every person will see something different. It's like, of course, the Temperance has an overarching theme, which is common. Everyone who reads tarot cards knows about the Temperance card, knows that the Temperance card is associated with these themes, but within the context of a reading, every single reader will give it a different meaning within the context, so to speak. And that's just based on your sensitivity. That is very much why when you work with spirit, the funny thing is that to deliver the very same message, different readers will draw different cards. They will end up reading the same way, but the different cards is just because of the fact that every reader reads it differently. And so to speak, even you, if you love watching tarot readings, you will notice that sometimes you watch a reading, like several readings from different readers over YouTube, and you will be like, oh my god, that's funny. It's like the universe is really wanting to say something to me, because every reading that I assist to, that I watch, ends up saying the exact same thing. But if you were to look, you would realize that each time the cards are different. Perhaps there's one card that tends to pop up again and again and again for you, but what you'll notice is that every reader picks up has a different spread, but the message appears to be the same. That's the whole point. It's like, it's not really about the cards, if not about the sensitivity that the reader develops with the cards. So that's one thing. It's like, I keep on thinking about this comment who says like, no, when someone says to a reader like, you didn't read the cards right, it's like, that's not the point of tarot. There is no right reading when it comes to tarot. And that's the thing. That's what brings me on to the next topic, which is different styles of readers. There are people who read tarot there are psychologists and psychiatrists who read tarot, which I discovered pretty recently. I mean, not that recently, but it's something that surprised me at first, because I was like, that's funny, that I wouldn't necessarily be expecting people in that field to be using that. But I have read the stories about people, like psychologists, and mainly psychologists, who in their like cabinet, like they would receive clients and they would draw some tarot cards, and I was like, oh, that's fun. And these people, it's like, why do you draw tarot cards? That's the whole point. Some people will read the cards based off what they have learned. It's like you draw the Temperance card, since that's one we've been talking about, and then you draw this card, and then you draw this card, and you have learned prior to the reading that this card is associated with these themes, this card is associated with these themes, and this other card is associated with these other themes. And it's just a matter of, what is it you remember about the card, what are the themes that you know, and how do they connect together. That's basically like, I like to consider it like just someone reciting what they've learned. Like, it's like passing an exam, basically. which is a very popular way of doing it. And it's not wrong in every way, in any way, it's not right in any way, it's just one way that people do it, which is beautiful. Just happens not to be the way I do it, but that's worth mentioning because it's a very popular way of doing it. You just draw the cards, you remember what you've learned, and then you just piece it together, basically. The thing being is like, why did you draw these cards in particular instead of other ones, which is another topic that we may be discussing later on. The way I do it typically is that I'm an intuition-based kind of person, and so the way I read cards is intuitive. That's why, yeah, a lot of people, sometimes in my comments, there are comments that show up about the fact that, oh, I enjoy the way you read this card because it was surprising to me. And as I read the cards, I do notice sometimes that the message is not so much about the archetype, but more about the imagery. Sometimes it's just the image that has a message, not the associations of the card. I tend to, yeah, just read the cards based on intuition because I consider, but yet again, that's a me thing. And I'm not the only one to read it this way, but it's just, I want to make it clear that there are many different ways to read tarot. And when I'm reading tarot with the spirit, I'm just like entering into a conversation, so to speak. And because spirit knows what I'm sensitive to and how I see the world, they will choose the card that will make sense to me. May not make sense to you, but it does not matter because I'm the one delivering a message to you, so to speak. And so the thing is that, yeah, sometimes I see the message in the imagery. Sometimes I see the message in the position of the card in the spread. Sometimes it's about the archetype. The whole point being, it's the message I do not always stream from just the tarot card and its archetype, which is something that we're going to be coming back to after, I believe. But that's the whole point, because sometimes it brings people to confusion, as in I make a spread and they're like, and I say something and they're like, yeah, but that's not what the card mean. And then I go like, what do you mean that's not what the card mean? I'm the one doing the reading. I'm the one reading for you. If you were to do the reading yourself so as to come to the same conclusion that I did, chances are you would have drawn different cards. Yes, that's true. But that since I'm doing the reading, I draw the cards, and so the cards are meant to make sense to me since I'm the one making the reading again. So that's one thing. And that's the thing to keep in mind also, is like, there are no... I invite people to listen to their intuitions when it comes to like, does it resonate or does it feel good? Like, is the medium that you're interacting with, where are they streaming their information from? You know, it's like, that is a you thing to decide. That is a you thing to see whether you vibe with that reader or that other one, whether you vibe with this medium instead of this other one. But just to keep in mind that, yeah, it's like there are many, many, many different readers out there, and everyone does it their way. Another thing, by the way, that I wanted to discuss about is like, what about the cards? Why the cards? You know, on YouTube, if you're someone who loves these kind of things, you have seen on YouTube people who would do like deliver messages by drinking a cup of tea and then looking at the coffee at the bottom. You've seen that before, right? I've seen people like bone throwing, that's the thing, which is not very common here, but it exists, like people throwing bones and they see a message in the bones. Someone else dropping droplets of inks in water and seeing how the ink develops and the shapes that it makes in the water, they see a message there. People who read stuff in sand, it's like there are many ways to do it, and the whole point I want to mention is, it's like, why is that a thing? It's mainly for the mind, actually. That's not something a lot of people know, but if you're into mediumship, you will realize that you don't need these tools, that they're just tools basically. And you notice it even in my own videos. Sometimes I just stream a message for like 15 minutes straight without even reading the cards that are on the table. It's like I'm just talking about something else, and then I come back to the table. Because as fun as they are, generally they're not needed. Like, tarot cards are not needed for a message, straight up. If you are connecting to the stream of information, if you're connecting to the source, this is just a tool. You can connect, you are the tool, your body is the tool. This is just an external thing. It's like in Harry Potter when people start using their wands. That's just like a wand, but the magic is here, it's not here. Do you get it? And at this point you realize, well, if you want to use a magic wand to translate these messages, you might as well choose the one that you vibe with the most. For some people, it will be tarot cards because it's a very popular option, certainly. Some other people want to get creative and read messages in bones, in teeth, in the lines of your hands. You know, it's like there are plenty of ways to do it. The whole point being that it's just a tool. And another thing, which may be a bit of an unpopular opinion, is it's mainly to help the mind. Because when you're streaming as a medium and message, it's like the tool is your body, effectively. But there is one thing that tends to distort the message that is very famous in the spiritual community, and that is the mind and the ego. That's the thing which is the most likely to arise and put itself in the way of the message so as to either block it or distort it. And that's the issue that we may be running into as we're channeling information. That's why us mediums love to occupy our brain while we're doing that. It's like, see a 3-year-old boy, you're wanting to work, but you got a 3-year-old kid who's just needing attention, and they're just poking at your leg constantly. Well, what do? Well, you just give something to play with. You know, it's like you give them a toy. You ensure that they're occupied while you're doing your stuff. That's very much how your ego functions, basically, these kind of things. I love using tarot cards because the images are very fun, they're colorful, and they keep me busy, basically. And when I start a reading that I may not be like completely in the zone just yet, generally happens at the beginning of the video. You notice it mostly like at the beginning of the first pile of the reading, that I'm not completely tuned in just yet. Tarot just is, like, to me, the starter, the kickstart, the fire starter. They're the permission slip to say, for the brain to say, no, it's the card saying it, so I can ease myself into the message. And after that initial phase, well, there you go. It's like, now you don't need the tarot really anymore to stream the message. I have made readings for people only intuitively, as in I have made energy readings for people without having access to my tarot readings. That's what I mean by the fact that it's just a tool. But I noticed that as of today, yes, it's still a good way to keep the mind busy. I'm not in a state at which I can, at the moment, just quiet the mind and like a guru and like not have to keep the mind busy. So that's a very good way to do it. But again, everyone does it. Like on Instagram, I would see, I stumbled upon a channel where it was like a very, very young boy that was streaming messages, and it was very obvious that they were channeling because the magnitude of the messages they were streaming at such a young age made no sense. It's like a kid of this age could not know this thing, so it's obvious that they were channeling. And the funny thing is that they were just playing video games. That was so, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like, it's so fun. It's like you would have this video of the mother recording the little kid while the little kid was playing video games, and the mother would ask questions to the spirit that the kid was channeling while the kid was busy playing video games. Their video games is my tarot cards, basically. Another thing is like, I believe he's called Henry Tyler. Or Tyler Henry, I don't remember. It's like Henry Tyler, I think. It's like I don't know much about him, but he's a pretty famous medium amongst the Hollywood circle. He even had a series about him on Netflix, I believe. When he does that, if you know him or if you want to check it out, it's fun because when he does his work, which is very unique kind of work too, you just see he's scribbling. He's just scribbling all throughout the session. He's not drawing, he's just like with a pen on the paper and just like that for perhaps an hour straight while he's delivering the message. Just, why is that? Keeping the mind busy. That's just what it is, until the point where you are like freaking guru. No, you don't have to be a freaking guru, but till the point that you reach the state of awareness in which you can just quiet the mind consciously. Us mediums tend to love having a way to keep the young mind, the young kid busy while we're working. That's why we have tarot cards, that's why we love throwing bones, that's why we love scribbling or playing video games as we do that. That's the thing if you're curious about it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm becoming aware that this video is gonna be awfully long, so treat it as a podcast. I'm gonna make sure that there are like the timestamps so that you don't have to watch it all if you don't want to, but I just want to take the time, you know what, it's like if it lasts 2 hours then so it be. The following theme that I wanted to talk about is like, what is mediumship in the first place? What's mediumship, what's channeling? The best way I like to describe it when it comes to mediumship is mediumship is basically you tuning into streams of information which are not physical. What does it mean? Your eyesight, your hearing, your taste, your touch, all of these are physical senses. They're connected to the brain, they're integrated and processed by the brain, and so we call them physical because you keep on information which is translated through the physical reality. This is what we call these are the physical senses, so to speak. When we touch on intuition, for instance, the sixth sense, the gut feeling, these things tend to be nowadays not so popular because they're not physical. And so in the society we've built, it's like everything which is not integrated by the brain, we tend to just discard it as non-existent. But basically intuition, gut feeling, it's all like you picking up on information which is not physical in nature. It's like we have other integrative centers within the body, the heart, the gut. They're like science has proven that they're like the second and third brain basically because of the concentration of neurons that you have there. But the whole point being is like there are other places within your body to integrate information. And yeah, the physical senses are integrated by the brain, the other non-physical senses get integrated by your gut or mainly your heart. And that's what mediumship kind of describes. It's like all of these other modalities of perception which makes no sense to the brain. It's like everything which is not integrated by the brain, we put into the category of mediumship. So in this category we find intuition, we find the gut feeling, we find what we may call the sixth sense, we find all the clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, all of the clairs, and we will never end like describing them all really. They're all describing like a plethora of modalities of perception of our human body which aren't physical, and we just put them all into the category of mediumship because we don't have any other way to describe them at the moment. It's like since we don't understand them, we can only know them, well, we just put it there. But the whole point being is like we all have this perception, these modalities of perception. It's like the majority of the modalities of perception of the human body are non-physical in nature. If you are someone who enjoys science, you already know that like I don't know if it's like 97 of our universe is non-perceivable by our human physical senses. All the things that we have ever perceived and ever known really through science in our universe is like make up between 3 to 5% of what is actually existing. And science has already recognized it because we don't perceive it. We have no means to perceive it. That's why the human body has many more non-physical modalities of perception than physical ones. But again, in a society where we have made our brains the kings, all of a sudden it's like everyone who is allowing themselves to use these other modalities of perception, well, they must be psychics. But it's like everyone has them. Not everyone uses them, not everyone develops them, but everyone has them. And that's what mediumship basically is. It's tuning into a stream of information which is not physical in essence. And when you do that, you start streaming into what we call energetic realities. It's like things which are very much real, but again, escape our modern day science, escape the comprehension of our brain. We can only, since all of these the wide majority of these other perception of the other modalities of perception, there you go, it's getting hard to say it. There are nearly all integrated by the heart, and it just happens that the heart, its specialty is to know, not to understand. So it's like, I can tell you, like, this table is brown and the color of this wall is white because I see it. That's it. But it's like, why is it that you see it this way? It's like, try to explain colors to a blind person. How would you explain that? If you got a blind friend or a colorblind friend, try to explain them colors. It's gonna be hard. Is that you can't really explain. That's just what you're receiving as an information. And when it comes to energy, when you're perceiving these streams of information, that's the same thing. You can't. It's like the brain is not capable of understanding these things and giving you like the why you're receiving it, why you're seeing this color. You just happen to be seeing this color. That's the very thing. And yeah, again, it's the heart generally which integrates all of this information more often than not, but it's not the only one to do that. But yeah, another thing about mediumship is that when you tune to these energetic realities, you really start tuning into the fact that everything is one. Although you may not have the current awareness of, although the mind may not be on that level just yet, when you start tuning to these streams of information, it's a staple. It's obvious, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to connect with that. It's like, how the heck are you supposed to know? Like, let's pretend I make a video, a tarot reading about, oh my god, we're gonna tune into the person that you're thinking, the person which is on your mind, the person you're thinking about, and how much they're having a crush on you, or how much you're having a crush on them, blah blah blah. How the heck is it possible? Like, just explain to me, how the heck is it possible that you can tune into what they're feeling? How is that a thing? Oh, because tarot card said so. No, that's not a valid answer. That's not a valid explanation. How do you explain that? How do you make sense of that? If it's not to the fact that everything is one. It's like there is a layer of our reality where there is no distance, where time and space do not exist. And as such, all the information is available right here, right now. That's where mediums stream their informations. A layer of our reality where time and space do not exist, along many other things, and as such the information of everything is available right here, right now. That's how you know. That's why it's like, when you're a medium, it ends up becoming an evidence that everything is one, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to receive this kind of information if things were separated. It would not be possible. The only way for you to receive this kind of information is for you to be connected to everything. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to receive it. That's the thing. A quick word on channeling, because we're going to be talking about it just after in the next point. What's channeling? Because it's a word that we get to hear, that I employ very often on my channel. Channeling is the capacity to interact with another consciousness, so to speak. Let me explain. Basically, this body is the manifestation of my soul, and it's the same for you. It's like your body is the one through which your soul is expressing itself, if you want to make it sense this way. But the whole point being that there is a connection between the vessel, the physical vessel, and the consciousness, so to speak. The thing that gives life to this vessel is not just biology, it's that there's a consciousness behind it. Something which appears very obvious when we're talking about like mental health issues, starts becoming a little more obvious, these things of consciousness being in or out of the body, like being connected or not, seemingly connected or not. But the whole point of channeling is that since there is a layer of reality where there is no distance, there is no separation, and everything is available when you want it, and that everything is just a consciousness where you can interact with other consciousnesses, so to speak. You gotta be open to it in order to be able to tune into it, because if you don't believe it to be real, obviously your mind will prevent you from being able to interact with these consciousnesses. But that's the whole point. It's like, you may be talking with the person on the other side of the room, and you're like, I'm able to communicate with them because they're here, right? If they weren't here, you wouldn't be able to communicate with them. On an energetic level, we realize that this idea of not being here or not being here doesn't make sense, because everything is always here at the same time in the same space again, And also, how could I explain it? It's like the consciousness is not limited in space to the body. It doesn't have boundaries, so to speak. So a consciousness can be accessed from everywhere and can be interacted with everywhere. That's why it's like the people who talk with other people who passed away. How's that a thing? Because although their body isn't here, their consciousness still is. It was here before they were on Earth. It is here after they were on Earth. It's like the soul is not temporal. It's not subject to this kind of laws that we have here in the physical. And that's what channeling is. It's being aware that you can interact with any consciousness. I like doing that with my plants. They're realizing that, yeah, of course, their experience of life is very different than ours. They're plants, they're not humans. The way they perceive and they relate to life is very different, but they still have consciousness. That's what I like to do with my crystals, which is a very unpopular opinion. Crystals are consciousnesses that can be interacted with. They're thoughts which generate thoughts. Their experience of life is wildly different from ours, obviously, but they still have very valuable things to do, to teach us, to show us. And the process of channeling itself, it generally, when you allow another consciousness to express itself through this physical vessel. If I am if I'm calling onto another consciousness, then I'm asking them to momentarily, I allow them to use this vessel so as to express themselves, while my own consciousness is still here, so to speak. That's what you would call channeling, basically. I know it's a little hard to make sense. I know it's a little hard to understand, but that's how I experience it, basically. So that's the best I can describe it. But yeah, it's very much opening up to the idea that since everything is energy, everything is also consciousness. And consciousness is just like a thought that can think thoughts of its own. And when you see that as a reality, then you realize that you can start interacting with a lot of things that you think you wouldn't be able to before. It's like today we define as alive biological organisms. Tomorrow we will start interacting with many, many other things that we consider to be inorganic. Viruses are conscious. The way they exist and the way they function as a consciousness is wildly different from anything we describe as biological. That's why so far science is not really keen on considering viruses alive, because it's not very close to what we've defined as alive. But if you interacted with it as a consciousness, you will realize that, yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's like you start understanding why a virus deals this way. During COVID, it's like no medium was surprised. Did you know? No medium was surprised about COVID happening. It's like we all knew that something like that would be coming, and it's no surprise that it affected this whole world. It's no surprise how it moved. If you tune into the consciousness, you see it's very much an alive thing, but its definition of alive is very different, so to speak. These are just like random bits and bobs. I hope it makes sense to a certain degree. Like, yeah, explaining channeling is not my cup of tea currently, but I really wanted to give it a try. So there you go. Tell me in the comments. Okay, so now we've discussed about like the generals, like the very general question: what is channeling? What is mediumship? We've set up the base. Now I want to start talking about like more specifics when it comes to this channel. What's a channeled message? That's the next item on my list, because that's what I deliver on this channel. I want to basically, a channel message is a message which is streamed from not necessarily me, not always me. By the way, if you are used to this kind of work and that you're sensitive yourself, you may be able to tell when I'm speaking and when it's me just streaming information, when I'm channeling, basically. The interesting thing about a channeled message is that it's not about the words which are being used, and that's the thing which I find very fascinating about channel messages. Channel messages is, I even say in some of my videos, like, please give me a second as I translate it. It's a frequency that you're tuning into, which is information at the end of the day. It's like, yeah, a frequency that you're tuning into that you get to translate into words. That's how you deliver the message. You translate it, but the channel message is very much about that frequency. The interesting thing about a frequency is that it's everything but linear and it's multidimensional. That's why, funny thing, if you read the comments below my videos, sometimes you'll notice that watching the very same part of the very same video, some people will feel extremely inspired and will tell you, oh my god, I felt this, this and that was amazing. And another person watching exactly the same pile of the same video will tell you how much they hated it because what they understood was completely different. How is it that the same content gets understood, integrated in seemingly like direct opposite ways? Someone finds it inspiring, the other one is severely triggered by it. That's funny, right? The thing is, because they understood something different. My job is, as a channeler, as a medium, is to be delivering these channeled messages, is to be like tuning into these streams of energy and bringing them on earth. But that's half the job, so to speak, and that's all that I can do. The other half of the job is how you receive it and how you integrate it. That I have no control over, basically. The idea is that through a channel message, it's like a multi-layered. I want you to imagine, like, I can use that, like this book where you have all of these different pages. It's like this is a channeled message, but these are all the streams of information which are contained within the channel message. And basically, depending on whichever vibration you're vibrating at currently, you will understand it one way or another. Which is funny, because sometimes you end up in this situation seemingly extreme where someone understands something and the other one understands the seeming opposite of it. The channel message aims always at being the most beneficial. I mean, that's the intention, I said it, for it to always be the most beneficial to someone. But the most through the same message, hearing seemingly the very same words, the most beneficial thing to you may be different than the most beneficial thing to your neighbor. That's why different people will hear and understand and integrate different information. Yeah, sometimes, if I can take an example, for instance, let's say we're doing a reading, a hot topic, we're doing a reading about your next romantic relationship, blah, 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 whatever. And we're tuning into the fact that, the reason to why it's taking so long, just making that up, the reason why it's taking so long is because you're discovering yourself, is because you're really learning. Yeah, we can put it this way. It's like the reason why your next romantic relationship is taking so long. Imagine that the message ends up being this way. The reason why it's taking so long is because you're getting to know yourself. Okay. That's the message that I would be streaming. How people would be understanding it may vary a lot depending on whichever vibration they're vibrating at the moment and whatever serves them best, so as to like help them in their journey of self-discovery, which is the intention that I said in these videos. So someone will find it to be a very inspiring message because they'll be like, oh my god, I've had so many romantic relationships and now I can tell that the universe is really giving me the opportunity to get to know myself, to be extremely clear on what I want, to be defining my boundaries, so that I am certain that next time not only I get to fall in love with myself, but next time I am in a romantic relationship, it's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be that much better because everything will be smoother because of the fact I know myself, because I just know that it's working in my best favor. Another one may not be aware of these things, and so there may just be like, well, that sucks because I wanted a romantic relationship right now and I feel like I have to be waiting. And another person yet again may be like, oh, I hate you because you're just telling me that I'm not going to have a romantic relationship. I don't believe you because I feel so powerless towards having a romantic relationship that feels good, that if you tell me that I have to wait, it just confirms my belief that I'm never going to be in a romantic relationship. So that message triggers me and I hate you for that. And the whole point, that's the thing, is like it was the very same words, but it benefits everyone in a different way. for someone is going to be benefiting. For the first case, the first person, the first viewer, it would be benefiting them because they realize that the process they're in right now is really about evolving and growing and expanding and getting to know themselves and falling in love with themselves. The second viewer, it may be benefiting them because they feel so stuck and in this waiting phase. Perhaps the fact of them feeling like they just have to keep on waiting is going to make them feel like they have to give up, and in this giving up they will start opening up to the reason to why they've been seemingly waiting. Sometimes to open up we need to break open, whereas the third viewer, perhaps it serves them best to be triggered the hell out of, because in getting mad and getting upset and feeling all of this darkness, they get to realize that there is darkness that needs attention in the first place. Do you see what I mean? That I have no control over. That's just you. I'm just here offering, that's the channel message in and of itself. I'm here offering a message, but it's a frequency, and I want, that's the whole reason to why I've created this channel in the first place, this frequency will be benefiting you. How it will benefit you, that I have no idea, because I don't know you. I don't know your history, I don't know where you are, I don't know how aware you are of this world, but the whole point is going to be benefiting you in some way. That's why everyone will be benefited in a different way. That's why everyone will hear something different in the channel message. And that's the beauty of channel messages, basically. It's like, since a frequency, here again, there are a million ways to relate to that frequency, and so everyone will get to experience it differently. That's also when it comes to channel messages, a lot of people, sometimes it's even recommended, but a lot of people will tell you that, yeah, each time they come back to this channel message, maybe a reading, maybe a seminar, maybe whatever it is really, each time they come back to the message, they get to hear, I got it ringing, you get to hear and understand something different, because each and every time you get to integrate more of the frequency itself. It's like the first time you understand this thing and it gets you thinking, and it makes you, and it expands you, and then you come back to it and you discover that this message actually went much further than you previously thought. And so now it's giving you another thing to think about, and then you come back to it, and yet again, each time you get to hear something else and understand something else and integrate something else. That's the beauty of channel messages, basically. Have I described everything? Yeah. So that is like the idea of behind channeling. I also wanted to discuss now in this moments, like I wrote down like what are my gifts, what are my, when we say like people are medium, when we say people are psychics, as we were discussing before, it's like there is a trillion different things put into the category of psychics, because it's like all of these modalities of perception that we don't understand. So everything we don't understand, it's either magic or psychic. Tomorrow science will prove it won't be magic anymore, it won't be mediumship anymore, but today it is, because we don't understand it. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna meet a lot of mediums, but every medium is gonna be doing something different. So I also wanted to take the occasion here to explain basically what I do, because it's not what another medium may be doing typically. What I love to do, well, one thing is obviously channeling. That I love. I work with a lot of spirits, and I tend to, the interesting thing about it is that entities which are not incarnated and which are not like, physically involved in this experience, and I choose to interact with those who are of a higher frequency than me, obviously, they have like a perspective from above, which is always super interesting, because when you look at things from the above, it always looks, it's like, it's much easier. It's like someone going through a labyrinth and someone looking at the labyrinth from above in a helicopter. Well, the one looking from above will obviously see the answer and will even be able to guide you through it, whereas the one going through the labyrinth, well, they don't know. That's why I love channeling messages, because they're always very interesting and very insightful. And so channeling is one of my things. Other things is, well, my intuition. my intuition goes hard, and that's another thing that I tend to use a lot in my readings and in the messages that I deliver. And besides that, I'm also like got some like stricter senses, modalities of perception. I am clairsentient, I'm clairvoyant, I'm clairaudient, and also a big one, I'm claircognizant. These are the four one which are like, which I use nowadays, which are very much activated, keeping in mind that this is like, when it comes to mediumship and psychism, this is very fluid in how it happens. Your gifts come online and change and morph very quickly as you grow and evolve. Your perception shifts as well. So today that's how I am. Tomorrow may not be the case anymore. That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay, next thing, and yes, this video will definitely be super long. I wrote down honesty because that's a little thing I wanted to talk about. It's like in the community of mediumship, in the community of tarot reading, because that may very well be the reason to how you stumble upon my channel. When it comes to tarot readings, like so far, and I don't want to say like so far, but the things which are very popular, especially when you look at like the big tendencies of this industry, so to speak, it's always like money and romance and things of that kind. The things which are the most popular are always like the videos who tell you, yeah, everything's gonna be alright, and that's very much not what my channel is about. So that's something that I wanted to talk about for a second. I've dedicated my channel to assisting people in claiming their light and in ascending, basically. That's how we tend to loosely name it. Helping people fully live in their light, helping people to remember who the freak they are, claiming how badass they are, embrace the love, the light, the abundance that exists within them already. And that is dedicating oneself to the truth and not necessarily what is preferred, which is a big distinction that I think is very necessary to make, because I see a lot of people, it's like even my outside of the channel, when some people are like, yeah, please do me a reading, I don't really like it. Also, reason to why I discussed it in the video, sometimes like I don't always like making predictions, so to speak, because I can tell sometimes that the people are not wanting to have a predictions because they're curious about the outcome, but because they're wanting to confirm what they hope for, which is not what I do. So that's why I don't like doing it more often than not, because I can tell that, yeah, predicting someone's future sometimes is like the person doesn't care about what is their future. They just want to hear what they are wanting, which may not be in their best interest actually, but at the moment they may not realize it, so they're not going to be even willing to listen to you. And that's a big distinction. That it's like something that tends to piss me off, and that's the reason why I tend now to call off some people, is as in, I'm sorry, but if you want me to tell you what you want to hear, there are a plethora of other readers online. You can go for them, you're going to hear what you want to hear, you're going to be happy. But that's not what we're doing here on this channel. Here we're here for the truth. We're here to lead people into realizing and walking in the heavens that they are meant to be walking in. It's like heavens on earth. It's available to everyone. But heavens on earth is not achieved by denial. It's not achieved by being delusional. It's like, it requires the truth. The truth is good, but the truth is not denial. So that's the thing that I want to make it clear. Is like on this channel, we do not discuss what you want to hear. We discuss what you need to hear, which is a big difference. It's a very short thing, but yeah, I wanted to just to take a moment to say, it's like I am dedicated to people being free, being happy, being in love. I'm not here to just tell people what they want to hear, because I just don't find it interesting. I don't find it fulfilling personally. So there you go. Now, what about the tools I wrote down? What about astrology, numerology, human design, things of that kind? I wanted to get a touch on it because I don't necessarily have a very common opinion, I'd say. To me, they're permission slips, most of it. And don't get me wrong, they're very valid, and I use them themselves. I do use them myself sometimes. There you go. But as you have noticed in my readings, I don't use them a lot. That's why I've never done a reading per astrological sign typically. And when I do talk about astrology, I tend to leave the signs out of there. When I have like a serious talk on astrology, I tend to talk about the planets and the energies that are reflecting, not about the signs. Because what I notice is that people love giving their power away to these kind of tools. And that to me just defeats the whole purpose of it. I like to think, when it comes to natal chart, a natal chart in astrology, for those who are not aware of it, when people say, oh, you're a Virgo, you're a Leo, you're a Gemini, you're this, you're that, what does it mean? It's like the day you were born, the stars, the sky, the universe was in a certain configuration, and we tend to say that because it was this way, then you're going to be that way. That to me is the opposite of what's going on. It's like, since the day you were born, the reason to why you are here was so clear that even the stars would reflect it to you. That's how I like to see astrology typically. To me, the sky is just a big mirror of what's going on here. It's like, yes, the energies are expressing themselves this way and that way, and it just so happens that if it gets confused, you can just look up and you'll see that the stars are reflecting that. Perhaps you may be walking during the night in a very dark forest and you just lose sight of the path. What you do is just look up and see what the stars are saying, and they'll just indicate you the direction. They'll indicate you where the north is. But the thing that I don't like about astrology, numerology, and all these kind of things is people giving their power away to it. That's why I tend not to use it that much. Because when you are, if you are sensitive and you're tuning into these energies yourself, you don't really need to look at the stars to know what's going on if you are seeing it yourself, so to speak. And I really hate people saying that, oh, something went wrong because it's Mercury retrograde, or, oh yeah, this thing happened in my life because numerologically this is a 8-month or a 9-year. I really dislike that, because to me it's completely missing the point of why these tools exist in the first place. No, it's not because there's a Mercury retrograde that your computer broke. It just happens that your computer broke, and when you look up in the sky, it's reflected back to you as the fact that, yeah, it's Mercury retrograde. That's the energy going on. The energy is so powerful that even the sky shows it. I just cannot get myself to feel good when people just give their power away to these tools. That's why I don't like using them too much, because when I use them, I just notice how people take what I say to distort it so as to make it make sense to them in this way, and it just doesn't feel right to me. That's why I don't use them. But don't use them that much, so to speak. There are still very interesting things there are still very, very interesting things about it. But personally, as of right now, I tend to gravitate a little further away from these tools. But I do know that there are plenty of people who use them like daily and who are thriving with them. So it's like, when it comes to these tools, I like people to make up their own mind about it. I don't use them too much. Other people use them a lot. It's like, whatever serves you best. Make your own decision, basically. Do you enjoy them? Do you not? It's like, there's no wrong answer, basically. But in this channel, I tend not to use them. That's why you will never see a reading about, like, something which is a little popular on YouTube is like readings per astrological sign. That's never gonna happen on this channel. But I know that a lot of people enjoy that, and I fully support it, for as long as you enjoy it. Next thing, I wrote down role of a medium of an oracle. It's like, what's the point of an oracle? It's like, why does it even exist? That's like the genuine question that I think I wrote down. Is like, why does it exist? And to me, it's very much like to guide those who may not be seeing these things. It's like, everybody loves to have guidance on what's gonna happen in their lives, right? But some people are not as attuned to these things. Some people do not perceive beyond just the physical. Some people just see what they see and that's it. It's like they don't see anything beyond that, which is okay, which is fine. But when you do see beyond, when you do see the signs and the communication and the information, which is all over the place, everywhere around you, within you too, it's just hard to just keep it to yourself. I just find it so inspiring to just, sharing like all the things that I perceive, that I sense, all this information which is available with the people, because like there's so much transformation, there's just so much beauty that happens there. And that to me is very much the role of an oracle, is like streaming all this information that may feel remote and not that easily accessible, and make it accessible to everyone. An oracle is effectively like a medium. An oracle, that's a bridge between dimensions. That's like the standard definition of it, is just bridging dimensions. But I just see it as, is like someone who brings the unseen into the scene. And that is very powerful, because there is a lot of like those who want to grow, who want to discover more, who want to access their joy, who just especially nowadays, through the transition that we're collectively experiencing, that our species is experiencing, is very relevant at this moment. In the future, it's gonna be like a standard thing to have like your family oracle. It's gonna be very standard. Today's we're not there just yet, but I just find that very interesting. Like when you can perceive all of this very insightful information and just streaming it like from the unseen into something that people, which is tangible, more often than not with your voice, so to speak. That is something that I found very, very cool. So that to me is very much the reason to why we have oracles around. Also because very relevant, especially in a society where, again, we're like operating a lot from our minds. The mind understands, but it does not know. That's how it's been designed. Your mind is not capable of making the difference between what you're seeing on this screen and the dream you had last night. That's why people wake up in the middle of the night because they had a nightmare. Oh my god, it felt so real. Because to your mind it was. Your mind has no notion of reality. Your mind does not know. It understands. It slices everything up and puts it into boxes. That's how it handles information. That's how he understands, but it does not know. And so when it comes to like that, typically, you gotta take a very concrete example. Nowadays, our species is experiencing things like climate change, and people notice that, it's like, the problem seems very obvious, but the solution doesn't seem as obvious. Some people say that the solution is obvious, but yet things are not changing. The whole point being is like many people have many thoughts and many ideas, but who really knows what needs to happen? The people who know what need to happen. The people who see, who have the vision of what's ahead, of what's the best solution. The people who have this knowing, not this understanding, not these ideas, the knowing, because they see how things are meant to be. These people are the ones with open hearts. These people are the ones to be leading. These people we call the light workers. No surprise to anyone. Well, these people are, they're the people who are streaming information from the unseen. And that's their role, in my opinion. Okay, next item on the list. Past me wrote my mission. It's like, why am I doing this? That's the thing that I think is just, it's gonna keep it short, but why am I doing this? To me, I just find it so inspiring. When you feel the love, when you feel the light, when you feel the abundance, when you see the possibility, the fact that all of it is available, all of it is possible, you just want to share it with the world. You just want to see, well, it's like the world I want to live in, the world we're heading towards is a world of love, light, and abundance. And that's very much what I'm inspiring within people. So, just these messages, all of this energy that I may be streaming, these insights, and however it may be benefiting you, is very much like, I want to be in a world where you can tell that the norm is love, light, and abundance, for this is what we're anyways going towards. That's what feels best, that's what feels good, that's what feels natural anyways. That's why we're not gonna escape it. But it just feels good to share, and that's very much the reason why I'm doing it. And that's very much why so far I've very much enjoyed doing tarot readings, because it's really an awesome opportunity to have these energy exchanges where I get to uplift people, where I get to notice how people are inspired to experience these higher frequencies for themselves, where people are inspired to uncover their truths. That's why I love doing these tarot readings. That's why I love doing this recorded readings for one-on-one, like when with clients, you know, like people. I love making these readings to see like how. I love the feedback of seeing how someone just benefits from it, just feels happier, someone integrating these higher frequencies. That's why I also love like doing these one-on-one sessions with people, not tarot based, but they're just energy exchanges where we get to like uplift each other, where you get to hit people with higher frequencies and see them rise. And that's just so beautiful, because that's the kind of world I want to live in at the end of the day. So that feels good to do. I think I wrote down, it was actually asked from a comment. I didn't write down the person who asked it. I couldn't find, I lost the comment where it was from, but someone was asking basically, how did you get into spirituality and how did you get into tarot cards, which I found very interesting enough to discuss about, like a bit of my history. I've never really been interested by spirituality per se. It just so happens that in my experience, healing became very relevant very early on because of my childhood experiences, and so there was a lot to heal. And as I dedicated myself to wanting to feel better, wanting to feel good, I started realizing, it just happened very organically to me. I got interested into psychology. I got interested in learning about all these kinds of things, and eventually I would realize that through the healing process, I would get to discover things that didn't make sense. You would realize that, I would just realize that sometimes the problems that we have is just because of how we're viewing the world. But when you reach this, when you release this emotion, that you get to the quote-unquote healed state, it's not so much about just a belief that has changed, but it's a state of being. At that time, I didn't know how to describe it. You would just relate. I would just notice that I felt different, that for sure, but I would relate to the world differently too. Something that was not in the mind. That was not in the mind. So and it's like the more I would do that, the more clearly it appeared, so to speak. And that's how I got into spirituality. Basically, is like I was just interested in feeling good, in my happiness, and living my best life. And today, people who are dedicated in living their best life and discovering their truth, they're called spiritual. That's the thing. It's like it wasn't my intention to be spiritual, so to speak. It just happened. So, but yeah, that was like why I got into it. As I go further down the line in discovering these things, I ended up realizing that I was awfully good at it. Like too good to just pretend like it was just an accident or a coincidence. That these things I would just, these things about psychology, I would just somehow understand it very easily, and I would even start seeing it within people. I didn't just felt people's emotions, which that I knew very, very early on, that I was very sensitive to people's emotions, hypersensitive or empath, whatever you want to call it. But I also noticed that I was actually perceiving how their mind was behaving. I just could tell how their minds would behave. I just could tell when someone would have a switch or a split or something like that. And later on, I would realize that, I also felt something that I later would describe as the fact that I perceived someone's energy field. Couldn't really put into word because as of today, I don't see it. I don't see auras, but I can feel how someone's energy feels to me, and that straight up indicates me a lot about them. I have a lot of information that people say, oh my god, I feel like you're seeing right through me. Well, truth be told, it's not all that, it's not that much of a lie, you know? And, it just happened organically. That's how I fell into it. And I just discovered I was very good at it. I started unearthing some of these gifts that I've arguably always had, but was not in touch with for the longest time. That's why it happened. Tarot cards, actually, it's a fun story. It's like, how did I get into tarot? There was a period in my life in which I was just binge watching tarot readings myself on YouTube. Don't remember how it started, but I just probably I stumbled upon one day, I just loved it, and so I just kept on like watching a bunch. And a year or two down the line, I just felt so inspired to try myself, and so that wasn't like my first deck for Oracle deck that I got like given. Those who know about Oracle know this one. It's a staple in the world of Oracle decks. It's a very, very famous one. It's the one with the animals. You probably have seen it throughout my readings. And I would just see like, yeah, one day I just watched a reading and I was like, oh my god, the cards that this person used to do their readings, they just look so good. I'd love to try myself, you know? And so I got gifted this deck and I just started playing it. Back then I didn't know what I was doing really. It was just, oh, that's cool, that's colorful, that's funny. That's it. But basically I started this way. It was funny, and then I would just pretend like I was doing a reading and I was trying to guess what it could mean. Back then I was reading a lot like in the little books. Like every deck comes with a booklet who like gives you a few bits and bobs about like the deck that you're using. But that's how I started basically. I just started having fun with the deck because it felt so good. I wanted to do like the same way that they did it on videos. And that's how I got into it. I got into Oracle decks, so I got this one, the Spirit Animal Oracle deck. Eventually I got other ones. I don't remember in which order, but I got the Moonology Oracle deck, which is another very, very famous one. Eventually I got the Dark Mirror one, which I loved. And I got a few like over time. And I really loved that. And at first, yeah, I think I said it earlier, it's like at first I just, like my readings were entirely Oracle cards. It's like just that. And I was just doing intuitive readings basically because there is no structure to an Oracle deck. So I was just, yeah, doing readings this way. And you know, the more I would do it, it's like I enjoyed it, so I didn't know I was training, so to speak. And it really didn't feel like learning, it didn't feel like training, it just felt like having fun because I just enjoyed it. When we say follow your passion and you may stumble upon your purpose. There you go. That's basically what happened to a certain extent. But yeah, I use like Oracle cards for a year and a half, 2 years perhaps. Like I really enjoyed them, making readings with Oracle cards for the people that I knew, like friends and family, things like that. And eventually what happened is that I already knew about tarot cards, but I really didn't feel drawn to it because I was very scared about the structure, having to learn that the Three of Wands meant this thing, and the Death card meant this, and that the Eight of Cups had this thing. Is like I just felt so not fun, so I stood clear from tarot. And one day I stumbled upon a reading where I just saw this deck being used and I was like, oh my god, that just looks stunning. It's like the imagery, I was just freaking in love with the imagery of this deck. It's like, it's so beautiful. So I ordered it and I was like, screw it, let's try. That's the only reason why I got into tarot really, because I was obsessed with this deck in particular. The imagery just felt so striking to me. And so I ordered it, I got it. That was like a few months before I started my YouTube channel. So it was very like much after that I got into reading Oracle cards. And when I received the deck, obviously like I spent a lot of time like studying the booklet, studying online, like what cards meant what. And just doing, I remember like I would be forcing myself to do like micro readings pretty much every day just to get familiar with the cards because there were so many, like 78 cards, something like that. It's a crazy amount of cards compared to an Oracle deck. I mean, I would like train this way, and then obviously as I would watch, I was still watching some tarot readings, and I would just see how other people would read the tarot cards. That would give me an idea of how you could see these cards. And so yeah, I just ended up learning the structure by virtue of just practicing. I really didn't like the idea of just sitting down to learn all the cards, although at some point I had to do it a little bit just to get me started. But after it was very much like, I quickly tuned into the cards as like each card being one archetype, and just figuring out as many ways as possible to as many different angles as possible to view each archetype, basically. And that still happens there, like, often when I see another reader drawing this card, and the reading that they have of this card is something that I may have never thought of before, and they're just like, oh, that's a cool idea. It's like, yeah, that makes sense, but I never thought that you could read this card this way. And that's how I learn, basically. But I have to admit, I still read, although, yeah, it's like I have learned like what the cards mean, so to speak, I still notice myself gravitating strongly towards oracle cards. And the way I read tarot cards sometimes is the way I would read oracle cards, which is pure intuition based, basically. So that's how I got into it. That's a bit of my story with tarot, so that's the thing. So yeah, that's it. The only thing is, like, if you have any questions, perhaps I was thinking, if you enjoy this kind of format, I could be doing other Q&As like that. If you have other questions about spirituality that perhaps I may have answered, like why, if I show you, like, why do mediums seem to be obsessed with crystals? It's like, you have noticed that a lot of tarot readers have crystals all over the place, but that's not random, that's not a coincidence. So perhaps that's something you're curious, perhaps you're curious to know how to interact with the consciousness of a plant or of a virus, since we were talking about that earlier. It's like, if you have questions, write them down in the comments. Yeah, I may answer them in the comments, or I may just, if you're enjoying this type of content, just let me know. Like the video and subscribe, you know, I'm gonna know that you enjoy this kind of content. And I may do, yeah, I was thinking perhaps if you're interested, I may do other Q&As, I may do other more like kinds of talks, podcast-like kind of videos. And yeah, that's all I got for today, really. So thank you so much for having listened to this. I hope that you got some answers to your questions, because I know that there were a lot of them. So there you go. I'm gonna be seeing you in the next video. Bye.